We are officially in full Week 4 fantasy football prep mode, and it's time to discuss the most difficult position to figure out in all of fantasy football, which of course is the tight end position. So today we're going through the top 12 tight end rankings for Week 4 fantasy football. And at the end of each tight end ranking video, I always give my favorite underdog tight end stream of the week. So make sure you stay till the end to catch who that tight end streaming option is. And we are also giving a giveaway on our FFN white hat right here. And all we need you to do is go down their comments, drop your hottest take for Week 4 fantasy football, or you can drop your best trade that you have made so far during this fantasy football season, and you will have a chance to randomly win the FFN white hat here. So please make sure to go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show support for the channel. It is much appreciated. So let's go ahead and dive into these rankings right now. So obviously your first tier here, Travis Kelce starts it off with taking on the New York Jets. I mean, Travis Kelce, it's like we discussed last week, it's hard to imagine anybody really overtaking Travis Kelce for the tight end position at this point. I mean, aside from, guys like TJ Hawkinson, who we'll get to in a minute, who maybe average more yards per game at this point during the fantasy season, Travis Kelce is basically a guaranteed for a touchdown every single week. And the thing is, it doesn't matter what the matchup is. Travis Kelce's a Hall of Fame caliber player. So I don't care if he doesn't have as many yards per game as TJ Hawkinson. He's always pretty much a guarantee to get a touchdown, and that's why he's going to continue to be our number one. But the guy who is pushing him at this point, and it's progress because he's now in the same tier as him, it's TJ Hawkinson. Minnesota Vikings tight end taking on the Carolina Panthers in Carolina this week. Hawkinson has been a legitimate stud in fantasy football this year. I mean, you can see it on the screen right now. Dude averages 9 targets a game at the tight end position, 59.7 total yards per game, and he's had a touchdown in 2 of the 3 games that he's played in this year. TJ Hawkinson, those are really good tight end numbers, man. And like I said last week, if anyone pushes Travis Kelce for that tight end 1 position at some point during the season, it's going to be TJ Hawkinson. He's the only guy that I believe really can get there. Darren Waller, nope. George Kittle, nope. Mark Andrews, last year, previous years maybe, I don't see it yet this year. I see it with TJ Hawkinson, man. And this matchup is great this week. Taking on the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, one of the worst teams in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, the targets are there, and not only are the targets there, but he actually leads the tight end position in targets this year. I love TJ Hawkinson, man. He definitely belongs in the same tier as Travis Kelce at this point. Moving down a tier, we've got a guy who has just been rising up my rankings, man. I love Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta has been a stud in fantasy football so far this year. And it goes against everything I believe in. When you look at the history of rookie tight ends in fantasy football, it's typically not very good. I mean, Dalton Kincaid's a prime example of this right now. He's struggling right now. Sam Laporta is not struggling. This guy took a massive jump in the rankings because he's been a total stud, man. He's way more important in this offense than I originally thought he would be. He leads the tight end position in yards, and he's also tied for second place in total receptions and targets for the entire season. So this guy has literally been super relevant in this offense, man. And the thing is, I don't see the importance fading. Even in a tougher matchup against Green Bay on Thursday night, I don't see this being a problem here for Sam Laporta to continue to get the volume that he's gotten. Moving on to number 4, same tier. He belongs in the same tier. And don't make too much of me having Mark Andrews 1 spot below Sam Laporta. Taking on the Cleveland Browns this week in Cleveland. So, like I said, it's not that Mark Andrews has been bad. And that's not the reason that he's below Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta has just been really good in fantasy football. But Mark Andrews, the target share is absolutely still there. He's still getting 6.5 targets per game, and the importance to the offense is still there. I've got no issues with Mark Andrews. I just think that Sam Laporta is a great fantasy option, and we got to keep rolling with it. But Mark Andrews, any week, and most weeks, is a touchdown threat. And so Mark Andrews will never be outside the top 5 unless he's healthy or something really drastic changes in this offense. At number 5, we've got Evan Ingram taking on the Atlanta Falcons this week in Jacksonville. So Ingram is a stud too. That's the thing about Evan Ingram is you can see 7 targets a game, and he's super efficient with 6 receptions per game. 8.8 fantasy points per game at the tight end position is nothing to scoff at, man. The problem with Evan Ingram is the offense as a whole in Jacksonville has been really, really bad. That's the ultimate problem here with Evan Ingram. But Evan Ingram has not been bad. He's actually been the bright spot on this offense through the first 3 weeks. The top tier offense, I know it's not great right now, but it's going to get going at some point here soon. And that's what gives him a large amount of upside. And the matchup here is pretty awesome as well. Number 6, we've got George Kittle taking on the Arizona Cardinals in San Francisco this week. Now, the thing about George Kittle is he's always been and always will be a boom or bust play at the tight end position. That's an important thing to keep in mind when you are drafting George Kittle. Like, this guy is not going to consistently give you 10, 12, 15 points in fantasy football. That's not who he is. There's going to be plenty of weeks where he takes a dump on you and gives you like 2 fantasy points, 1 fantasy point. There are weeks like that, but there's also weeks where he's going to give you 15 points, 20 points, 25 points. That's George Kittle's nature, and it's the nature of this offense. Everybody in this offense gets a piece of the pie and has a big game at least 1 week during the season. Every single tight end in fantasy football, aside from like Travis Kelce and probably TJ Hawkinson at this point, they're going to take a dump on you from time to time. That's the problem with tight ends. But the reason that he's here and he's always going to be in the top 10 is because the upside is always high in this offense, and just him as a player has high upside. The matchup potential is here this week against Arizona. He's rarely going to be outside of my top 10. Number 7, we've got Darren Waller taking on the Seattle Seahawks at home in New York this week. Listen, I get it on this one, guys. Totally understand. Before the season starts, I actually really wasn't big on drafting Darren Waller. The guy's in his 30s now. He's been dealing with injuries. It didn't make a ton of sense to me, but I do see the upside there. And it's been really underwhelming so far, probably based on where you drafted him in fantasy football. You probably drafted him pretty high, and he's been a big disappointment. The hype was there. The production has certainly not been there so far. But here's what to remember with Darren Waller. He's 4th at the tight end position in targets so far this year, and he's also got 11 yards per reception attached to him. So what this means is that not only is the workload there, but the big play potential is still there for Darren Waller as well. This week, the matchup is good. Seattle's a good matchup, significantly lightens up after an absolute beatdown against the San Francisco 49ers this past week. And they've also got a couple of days off as well. So they're going to come in probably fresher than they have been since week 1. I think Darren Waller actually could have a pretty big week this week. Dallas Goedert is number 8, taking on the Washington Commanders in Philadelphia this week. And honestly, this guy, Dallas Goedert, has been even more disappointing than Darren Waller. That's Dallas Goedert's reality. There's really 2 main reasons why Dallas Goedert is going to consistently remain in the top 12 tight ends, though. The targets are there. You can see it on the screen, 5 targets per game. At a wide receiver position, that's not much. But at the tight end position, that's a pretty decent number right there. And he's also on a very, very good offense. The offensive capability is there. It's in a similar situation to Jacksonville where they haven't been at their best yet, but we're still very early in the season. This is still the first quarter of the entire 2023 NFL season, guys. The matchup is also good this week against the Washington Commanders that just got absolutely trounced by Buffalo's offense. We know that Goedert will have big boom games at some point, and you never want to put it past him, and you never want to put him on your bench when he has that type of big game, and you don't know what it's going to come. Number 9, we've got Hunter Henry taking on the Dallas Cowboys in New England this week. I probably was a little bit overzealous of my ranking of Hunter Henry last week. I had him inside my top 5, and it didn't work out. The matchup was bad. In hindsight, I shouldn't have put him that high. And honestly, the matchup is not great, obviously, here. This is a matchup against Dallas's defense. They had a bad week last week. They're probably going to be really pissed off and coming in this game ready to play. The reason why Hunter Henry's not going to fall outside the top 12 is because the volume is still there, though, man. He remained consistent last week from a volume perspective. So I believe that the volume is there enough and the touchdown threat is there enough for Hunter Henry still to remain in the top 10 of tight end rankings. Kyle Pitts is at number 10 here, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville this week. Now, Kyle Pitts is obviously a big disappointment from a lot of fantasy fronts. Really, he's a lot similar to George Kittle and Dallas Goedert. The only difference between the two is really that those two guys are in elite offenses and Kyle Pitts is not. The reason why he's here is because of the upside he presents. The volume has been there. He's had 5.7 targets per game, and he has 11.1 yards per reception attached to him. Very similar to Darren Waller. The guy is a big play threat at the tight end position, and the matchup this week is not bad either. So Kyle Pitts remains inside the top 10 for this particular week. Luke Musgrave taking on the Detroit Lions on that Thursday night game in Green Bay this week. Listen, again, rookie tight ends, usually not big on him, but the volume has been there for Luke Musgrave. 5 targets a game. And honestly, the importance to the offense, I think, is going to remain even if Christian Watson comes back this week or not. That's what I believe, because the guy has definitely been playing well enough to remain an important offensive piece in this passing attack. This one honestly could be a shootout on Thursday night. I would not be surprised if it could be a shootout. Detroit can score points, and surprisingly or not, Green Bay can score points too. Number 12 rounded it out, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys taking on the New England Patriots at home this week. Listen, Jake Ferguson has very good volume attached to him. 6 targets per game. The problem that he has is that he doesn't do much with the targets. 23.3 yards per game. Very similar to Dalton Schultz, and not really even as good as Dalton Schultz was. But again, I think the narrative of this game is that Dallas is going to come in pissed off in this game. And I think that plays in a guy like Jake Ferguson's favor, because I think we could get a sneaky touchdown or 2 even from a guy like Jake Ferguson this week. And as promised, my underdog tight end option of the week, if you don't have any of these top 12 guys, I've got Juwan Johnson of the New Orleans Saints here this week. Now, the thing about Juwan Johnson is he was actually kind of a sleeper guy that a lot of people were really secretly picking at the back of the draft this year. And I understand it. Last year, when you look at him, he was actually really good in a lot of games. Well, the irony here is that Derek Carr is expected to miss this game. And Derek Carr really hasn't been looking Juwan Johnson's way that much this year. Well, guess who Juwan Johnson did very well with last year? He did very well with Jameis Winston. In the games that Jameis Winston played, Juwan Johnson had some big fantasy weeks. The matchup potential is here against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that this is a week that Juwan Johnson going to get a touchdown or 2 at the tight end position. So let me know what you think of the tight end rankings in the comments below, and what matchup questions you need answered before Week 4 fantasy football. And if you want to see the top 30 wide receiver rankings for Week 4 fantasy football, click on this video right here.